Live from Columbia, this is WIS News 10 Midday. Live, local, now.
Everyone, it is day 27 of the trial for Alec Murdaugh, the former attorney accused of killing his wife and son. The 12-person jury was transported from the courthouse today to look at the murder scene for themselves. Greg Adeline is joining us from Colleton County with a recap of what that trip entailed. Greg.
Good afternoon to you, Dondi. Lots of anticipation outside the Colleton County Courthouse here in Walterboro as closing arguments are set to get underway in the murder trial of Alec Murdaugh. The crowd here is definitely one of the largest crowds that we have seen so far in this trial. They were here early, and as different members of the prosecution showed up, they were cheering at times, even cheering for Kenneth Kinsey, who was the final witness for the prosecution, a crime scene analyst. As he walked into the courthouse, that crowd cheered. Now, Buster Murdaugh and the Murdaugh family arrived shortly after that to silence from this crowd. And again, the anticipation here is mounting as closing arguments are set to get underway here in just a short time from now. This afternoon, prosecutors and the defense will battle in those closing arguments, making their final impressions to the jury. Jurors, Dondi, you mentioned it off the top of the newscast, fresh off their trip to Moselle, the scene of the murders June the 7th, 2021. They were able to observe that crime scene at the kennels that they've heard about for the past 5.5 weeks. They stayed for about 15 minutes at the kennels, and lots has changed in the past year and a half. That property is overgrown. There's been some cosmetic changes to the kennels themselves. Now back to the closing arguments. The main event, really, since Alec Murdaugh testified on his own behalf for his defense last week. Really, prosecutors have the challenge today. This is how we can set this up. Certainly going to be a challenge for these prosecutors to tie their case together in a cohesive and compelling final pitch. One of the criticisms of the prosecution has been at times they've really covered so much ground, so many details, from financial crimes, the roadside shooting, cell phone forensics. Today they will need to button it all up in what will probably be an hour-long closing argument to leave jurors with the inescapable conclusion that Murdaugh, and Murdaugh alone, was the only one who could have committed these murders. Now, for the defense, their goal is to plant any seeds of reasonable doubt with one or two jurors, perhaps, that they've identified who might be sympathetic to their cause. Jim Griffin will handle the closing arguments for the defense. Creighton Waters will handle the closing argument for the prosecution. Now, something to consider. You really could argue that Creighton Waters and the prosecution delivered on the promises that they made to the jury in opening arguments 5.5 weeks ago, particularly as it pertains to cell phone evidence in this case, placing Alec Murdaugh at the scene of the murders just moments before the murders happened. Prosecutors say that the murders happened 8:50 the night of June the 7th, 2021. Prosecutors have nailed down that timeline, placing Alec Murdaugh through that kennel video and Alec Murdaugh's testimony at 2 minutes before those murders happened. Take a listen to Creighton Waters in his opening statement a short time ago to talk about just how key that cell phone evidence is in this case.
The defendant, Alec Murdaugh over there, told anyone who would listen that he was never at those kennels. But the evidence is also going to show from these things that every one of us, most of us carry around in our pocket, that he was there. And he was there just minutes before, with Maggie and Paul, just minutes before their cell phones go silent forever and ever.
And so ultimately they will return to that argument in a short time from now as closing arguments get underway in this case. Ultimately, prosecutors making it a case and a referendum on Alec Murdaugh himself and the lies that he told to investigators. That'll be a big part of their final pitch to these jurors here in just a short time from now. Now, closing arguments should last for the duration of the afternoon. After that, the jury will be charged. They will have the case in their hands, and we could then expect a verdict at any time. It could come later on tonight. It could come tomorrow. Jurors have said that they will work through the weekend. The court has said that jurors will work through the weekend before they arrive to a conclusion and to a verdict. We could know the fate of Alec Murdaugh here in relatively short order. And of course, WIS will have this covered from all angles. Our Judy Gatson will be joining us along with Carl B. Grant, our legal analyst. We'll have complete coverage of the closing arguments. Nick Neville here as well, gathering all of the details from these closing arguments that are set to begin here in just a short time. We will take them in their entirety here also on WIS TV and WISTV.com. But for now, that is the very latest in Walterboro. Greg Adeline, WIS News 10.
Greg, thank you so much. You have been our eyes and ears to this riveting case. And for our viewers, you can watch those closing arguments that will be taking place soon here, as Greg said. Watch it on WISTV.com. You can also download the WIS News app or watch on our streaming channels of YouTube, Roku, and Fire TV.